Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Inspire to Fire podcast. My name is Chris and I'm your host. And today we have Bola joining the show. She is the CEO and founder of Clever Girl Finance. And I'm excited for her to join the show today because she's going to be discussing her money story as well as how she drew inspiration from her mother, as she calls the hustle queen. And you guys will find out why she calls her the hustle queen, but I agree with her. She really is. Bola is an amazing person, and I love the discussion that we had. She is a best-selling author, and she's created an amazing community filled with resources. She's given away free courses. She really is an amazing person, as I said, and I'm excited for you guys to hear her story. So she's going to be going over her money story, as I mentioned, some common mistakes that she's made, which I think are important to go over because that's how we all learn. And this shows that we're not perfect as well. We all make mistakes. And then we're going to get into how she was able to overcome those money mistakes, what she did in order to save $100,000 in just over 3 years, and what that got her. And so we're also going to talk about her mission in terms of increasing financial literacy. So I hope you guys enjoy. And without further ado, Bola, welcome to the show. Hey, Bola, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me as a guest.
Yeah, I'm very excited to have you. Your story is very inspirational, and you're doing so much to help the community. So that's why I wanted to bring you on. I wanted to have you share your story, and we can start there. I think. Can you tell us a little bit about your money story, your background?
Yes, so I am a child of immigrants. I'm originally from Nigeria, and I had the opportunity to just watch my parents navigate their finances growing up. Um, my mom got married very young. She was 19 years old, and my dad was older. And I got to watch my mom navigate just not knowing anything about money to figuring out how finances work to eventually becoming our family breadwinner when my dad went through financial slash health issues. And that just very much defined who I was and what I wanted to accomplish with my finances. Specifically, coming from a traditional background where the dad or the father or was the head of the household, and they were the designated caretaker and financial manager of the home, and the mother was typically the homemaker and childminder, and that was how the roles were designated. And as my mom started to get older, and watch her friends going through different situations like divorces or losing spouses or the inability to exit a bad relationship, she just didn't want to be in that position where she couldn't stand on her own 2 feet, where she didn't have any idea about finances or she didn't have any money. And although my parents are still married today, my mom decided to go back to college, get a job, and she started working and putting money aside and saving and running side hustles and small businesses. And so that really tied into my money story. And so for me, moving to America in the middle of college was exciting, but at the same time, I had no idea about the American financial system. I was going to college in Europe. I was born in Europe. And so coming here was understanding credit, was understanding investing, it was understanding how 401k worked, it was understanding all these different nuances of the US financial system. And so in
Mhm.
college, I made, mistakes like getting my first credit card that I had no business getting and not much of any income whatsoever to support. But then graduating, it was okay, my mom has made really really major sacrifices for me. My dad has made really major sacrifices for the family. I want to show them that I'm going to be successful, and doing well with my money was one of those things. So, my finance story, my money story, really comes ties into just watching my parents and my upbringing, and not taking any of the opportunities that I had for granted, even though I made a ton of mistakes.
We're going to dive into some of those mistakes just so that we can learn from them together as well. Um, but it seems like your mom had a big inspiration, of course, on your finances. Can you go into a little bit more about how she was able to do make such a transformation. I mean, going from not having control of her finances to completely financial empowerment. And I mean, she was doing a lot, and to the point where you call her the side hustle queen. How did she make such a transformation, or hustle queen?
Yeah, so it wasn't more so of not having control, it was just not knowing.
Mm-hmm.
My dad managed all the finances, and my mom just, she got the household allowance for groceries to take care of the kids. And that's typically, many, many households around the world still do operate like that, interestingly. And
Yep.
so she just was in that space where she's like, okay, I'm seeing all these things happening to my friends. My friends are getting divorced, and they're being left out with the short end of the stick because they have no idea about the family finances. My friend has unfortunately lost a spouse, and she has no idea about his investments or his assets, and his family has taken over everything, right? And she just has just nothing financially, or friends who just wanted to leave relationships and they couldn't because they didn't have their own financial backing. So for her, she felt that just being able to get a job, was important. Being able to work was important. And she felt that getting educated, getting her college degree would help her attain that. So my mom, when I was 3 or 4 years old, would take me to her college classes. I went through
Mm-hmm.
all 4 years of college with my mom. I went through my mom's MBA with her. She got a master's degree. Um, and she started working in investment banking. And while she was working in investment banking, she's like, wait a minute, you know, I need to have multiple streams of income, right? And just coming from Nigeria, where at the time there was a lot of economic uncertainty, there was all kinds of, political things that impacted the economy. My mom wanted to have all kinds of fallback plans just in case. So she, went on to becoming a Coca-Cola franchisee. She opened a hair salon. She had a girls' school. She had a bakery. She had all these different things, and she would hire staff and she would delegate. And evenings after work, she would take me and we would go to visit her different businesses. On weekends, we would go and sit down at different businesses. um, and so my mom just started to hustle and put money aside. And it was just, not even just for her, but also for her family. My parents both come from extremely poor backgrounds. They are both, from my mother's side, her and her siblings are the first to get educated, period, like primary school, secondary school. The same on my dad's side. And my dad, is, he has a twin sister who is not formally educated. Like, she does not read and write. She's traditionally educated, which means, she can navigate life, but she's not formally educated the way people think about education today. So it was really, really important, for my mom to have her finances in order. And so my dad was a little bit, not excited initially, because he was brought up in the sense that you take care of your family, and if your wife has to go out to work, then you're doing something wrong. Maybe you're not taking care of
Mm.
your family well enough. But eventually he got around with it, and it was really great that he did, because several years later, when I was a teenager, my dad went through a financial downturn and he had to retire early, about 15 years early. And my mom stepped in, at that time, and she became the breadwinner.
Yeah, it's so important to have that team, husband and wife, that can kind of support each other. Your dad, I'm sure he wasn't expecting anything like that, and but yeah, and it seems like this inspired you to, well, it's all coming together as well because Clever Girl Finance, which you started, is geared towards this financial literacy and specifically for women. But I think myself included, I've learned a lot from it. So, is this kind of how that transitioned? Is that the start of Clever Girl Finance and what the mission was?
So Clever Finance was definitely inspired by my mother, but it wasn't something that
Mhm.
I set out to do. I didn't graduate from college and say, oh, I'm going to start a personal finance business. That was no, it wasn't even a thought in my head. For me, it was just, I studied computer science and business. And I almost second majored in economics, but I didn't want to stay in school for any much longer because of the cost. And so I was just focused on my career path in technology strategy, which is where I worked. And also I was focused on just, okay, I've gotten the salary, I want to save money, I want to, take care of my parents in the future, I want to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. I don't ever want to experience what my mom's friends have gone through. That has always been in the back of my mind. Like, it's that fear of being broke, because I got to sit in the corner as a child and listen, just sitting in the living room corner, playing with my toys or reading something and listening without really understanding, to my mom's friends, just telling her all these things and that were going so terribly wrong because they didn't have money,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
for themselves or for their kids, or just, and I'm not talking about millions of dollars in the bank. I'm talking about basic, money to buy food, money to rent an apartment, that kind of, thing. So, um, just coming out of college, focusing on just getting my finances, saving money, understanding how finances work. And as I was doing that, I was constantly talking to my friends about how I was saving, what I was spending, learning about investing in my 401k. It just was an organic conversation. I would always talk about money to my friends, and my friends knew me. I was always the girl talking about money. And they say talking about money is, there's this old adage that women don't talk about money and all these other things we're not supposed to talk about, but I was always talking about money. So as a result, my friends would always ask me questions. What do I think about this? What am I doing about this? And so I started blogging initially just as a personal blog where I would write about finances and fashion, because I also liked like fashion and shopping, ironically. But then later on, as I got married, as I had kids, I started to see a lot of what my mom was experiencing, right,
Mm-hmm.
around the
Mm-hmm.
same age that I was, back then, with people that I knew. And so it just came to me one day that why don't I just actually document the process as to which I do this, and also showcase how other women are managing their own finances. And that was the beginning of Clever Girl Finance.
Must have been grateful, like you said, at that time to have your mom in a position where she was able to take control. So
Exactly.
I think that's amazing. So you started building this personal finance blog in order to, like you said, give back to the community, and you just love talking about money, and it's a taboo subject among women and men also. It's certain topics shouldn't be talked about in terms of money.
Yep, and
Um,
it kind of still is.
mm-hmm, mm-hmm,
Although there's a debt-free community, one of the things that we all have to recognize is that once you step outside of the debt-free community, once you step outside of the finance enthusiasts community, right?
mm-hmm.
Um, in your everyday life, money is still a taboo subject. Generally, people are not just going to sit down and say, "Hey, I have $25,000 in debt. Let's talk about that."
Right, that would not
No.
make great conversation at the
No.
table.
Yes. And so, I always try to remind myself, because when being so immersed in, the community, you make all these connections with other people who are kind of like on the same wavelength, talking about finance, etc., like you and I having this conversation. But it's also important to remember that not everybody, right, is in that space. Not everybody knows what you know. And so that's one of the things that, is important for Clever Finance as a company, is that yes, it's great that, we're part of the debt free community, we're part of the finance community, but we also, our goal is to empower those who are not yet in this community, who don't know what we know, who are feeling shame or embarrassment by what they don't know, right?
Mhm.
So that they can feel comfortable about getting their finances in order as well.
Definitely. And is that part of the reason why you chose to make your courses free? That's one of the things that jumped out at me was that your courses are free, and you have over 30 courses that I saw that are in depth about certain topics like debt free and investing. Is that kind of where that came from?
So our courses have not always been free. Prior to this year, and really the reason why we made our courses free was really to empower our community and to be there to support our community as they navigate this difficult season. Number one, COVID had a devastating impact on many people, including the women of our in our community, and the Clerical Finance community is primarily made up of Black and Brown women,
Hmm.
who, you know impacted even before COVID, more so, financially, just by virtue of their demographic, by virtue of history. And so just knowing the impact of COVID, knowing the impact of the amplification of race matters and how these women were trying to navigate their finances, it made sense for us to support our audience that way and stay true to our mission, which is empowering women to achieve financial wellness. And so that's why we made our courses free permanently. And the response has been really overwhelming. We just thought that it would be something that we would do and just keep it moving. Okay, great. Let's figure out how to reestablish that income stream. But the response was way more than we expected. So
Yeah, and I think it just comes down to providing financial literacy. I mean, it's
yep.
not available, and what you're doing is lowering the barrier as much as you can and helping people in a time like now, which we know everybody needs some sort of assistance, whether it's COVID related or discrimination that's still going on. So I think it's super important that first of all that we're talking about it, and you're also providing these resources for people
Yes.
that need it the most. So that's amazing mission from Clever Girl Finance. So thank you
Thank
for
you.
that. I do want to rewind a little bit and get back to your story because again, it's inspirational. So after you got out of college, you didn't necessarily have all this financial literacy. You learned from your mom. You learned a lot with the MBA as well, but you didn't necessarily have everything put together like you might have now. Talk to me about some of the money mistakes that you kind of made early on and how you learned from those.
Oh, I've made so many money mistakes. And I'm sure I still have a number to make into the future because if you don't make mistakes, how do you learn? I think one of my very first money mistakes was that first credit card in college and not even understanding how it worked or what it was. I just knew that I was
Hmm.
getting a free T-shirt, which now is no longer. Companies are no longer allowed. It's illegal for them to come to college campuses and recruit credit card signups and offer free T-shirts and pens and nonsensical stuff like that. But when I was in college, that was the thing. Every credit card company had a table at the career fair. It was like half companies and half credit card companies.
Hmm.
Luring you in with a free T-shirt, a free, whatever it could be, a mug.
That's the best return on investment for them.
Exactly. And I signed up for a credit card. I remember the first time I went to the table, I called my mom like, "Oh, mom, they're offering me this free credit card, like $2,000, $2,500." My mom was like, "You better get away from that table." And then, yeah, and they were like, "Your mom doesn't need to know. Aren't you on campus? We could send you the letter straight to campus. Your mom never has to know." So I signed up for that. Obviously, you sign up for a credit card, you get I think my limit was $2,000. And I was like, "Oh my God." And I went shopping, bought all these things. In a matter of a month, I had maxed out the entire card. I can't tell you what I bought other than clothes, some other nonsensical stuff. But it just was like, for me, it was like a mind lapse. I'd never had a credit card. I didn't know what it meant. Just credit. Wow, I'm getting credit. What did I do? Something really good. So,
Hmm.
so there was that big mistake. And learning later, the interest rate was 24.99. Having to
Ouch.
pay it off, having to tell my mother what I had done. And she's like,
Yeah.
"You better figure that out." So there's that. There is, coming. There's with learning investing and just being really impatient. Like, I used to really like Gap when I first came out of college. So I would buy Gap stock and I would see the stock fall. I would check it every day, and then the minute it fell, I would panic, and then I would
Hmm.
I would
Hmm.
sell it and lose money. And then after I sold it and lost money, I'm like, "Oh, wait a minute, the stock's back up." I would buy more. It was like the worst way to invest, but I was learning, right? And
Hmm.
it was just that navigating my emotion around financing, getting clear on around my finances, getting clear on my long-term goals, understanding what my risk tolerance was, um, diversifying my portfolio, all those things that I needed to learn, right? So there was a lot of trial and error with that. One of the mistakes that is I most popularly talk about, which is my designer handbag collection. So I'm a huge designer handbag person. I still have designer handbags today, but after I had saved a big chunk of money, I got to a point where I started to feel like I deserved something. And so I bought a first designer handbag. And that's fine. I used the handbag. I loved the handbag. But then I was, oh, I need another one and another one and another one. And what was happening is I was acquiring all these. all these designer handbags at the expense of my finances because I was not saving as much. Every time I bought a new handbag, that was money that wasn't going to my savings account, that wasn't going to my investments. And that's fine also because life is not all about accumulation and then dying. You still have to enjoy the life you're living. But
Mm-hmm.
for me, it made no sense because I was not using the bags. It was a waste of money. They were just sitting there watching me in my closet every morning, waving sadly. Now, what about me? And so it just didn't make any financial sense. It was a complete waste of money. I was not using them. My cost per wear was zero. So there was that, and just, eventually letting go of them and selling them and getting money back and investing. But there was that mistake. And, we could make this whole podcast episode about random mistakes that I've made. But, those are some of the mistakes I've made.
Well, and those mistakes are similar to mine actually. I did the same thing, and in college got a credit card and maxed it out and was just making minimum payments. I also made a few mistakes with trying to time the market and purchase single stocks, and I think that those mistakes are something that a lot of people go through, and especially the one with credit card right out of college, because as you were mentioning, these credit card companies, they know what they're doing. So they're there for a reason, and they even told you your mom or your parents don't have to know. We can send you the bill directly.
Right.
I don't know if that's some sort of uh, what's the word for it? They're
Some
basically, yeah, they're just
marketing tactics. I mean, they spent
mhm, mhm.
millions of dollars. They have all their different avatars. Maybe they have a million of them, and it's like, how do we respond to each and every question? How do we target this person by virtue of who they are, where they come from, where they go to school, blah 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 blah. And they have a blueprint on how to approach you, and they can counter every counter you have.
Exactly.
They're pros.
And we're college students at the time, and we're just helpless. We're basically a deer in headlights.
Exactly.
So I'm glad that you we spoke about that, and so those are money mistakes to make, to help college students avoid as well. And then the single stock money mistake, that's your money mistake. I think it's mine as well. Other people might have success, but I like to say that investing should be more tailored to risk tolerance, diversified, indexing, things like that, which we go over on this show as well. So now that was the setback, right? Talk to me about the comeback, the when you started putting everything together. You said you sold some of these precious designer bags of yours that were just sitting in the closet looking at you. So, talk to me about that process and what happened over the next 3 years.
So, my designer handbag collection came after I had saved money. I was
Oh,
like, oh,
okay,
I've
okay.
got money now. I'm gonna buy some handbags.
Mm-hmm.
Um, because before that, I couldn't afford a designer handbag. I could look at them from the window, but there was no way I was gonna buy one if I didn't have any money in the bank account, unless I was going to get into debt to buy a bag, which I was definitely not going to do.
Good thing, good
After
thinking.
my college credit card experience and how I had to hustle my life to pay off $2,000, it was like I was paying off $1 million.
Yes.
And it was only 2000, but it was like, oh my god, so
Yep.
I had $10 here, $3 here.
It's so
um,
true.
so coming out of college, though, one of the stories that's also really popular that I'm most proud of, from that time of my life, was just being fresh faced, not knowing anything about finances, but having that intention and that goal to save, and being able to save over $100,000 about 3.5 years after I came out of college. So I did that before I turned 30. I think I got to that 100,000 mark a little after I turned 28, and then I saved additionally. And for me, and I'm a late college graduate, by the way, because I took a year off of school, for finance reasons, etc. I had that gap year, and I started college when I was 19. So yeah, so I came out of college, didn't know a lot about finances, and I just wanted to learn. So I picked up a personal finance book, and one of the things that I remember vividly going through the bookstore was that, wow, there's a lot of finance books, but they're not a lot by women. and there's not a lot
Mm.
by women that look like me. But you know what? This book says finance for women, so I'm just gonna pick it up. And it was a finance book for women by a white man. Okay, fine. But I bought it, and that book became my finance Bible. I read it to shreds. It was falling apart. I bought a new one, and I just implemented everything I learned from that book as it related to building my finances. I learned about budgeting. I learned about emergency savings. I learned about taking advantage of my 401k and taking on the free match. I learned about investing and, investing in a way that worked for me. And based on that, I was able to set the foundation to save money. As I got raises, I would save every raise I got. Every tax return I got, I would save. It wasn't a lot of money. I would save it. Every bonus I got, I would get like $2,000 bonuses that were taxed at 50%. So I would have $1,000. I would
Mhm.
save those. And then I ended up starting a side hustle that ended up also helping me generate a good amount of money towards my savings. And I got really lean and mean with my budgeting. I set priorities. Working in New York City at the time was very challenging because there's a lot of distractions, especially with young people. And New York City is very expensive. By the time you go out to two dinners, you take three taxis, you've spent a few $100s, if not more. So,
Yes, for
um,
sure.
so it was doing that, and as toward by the end of that 3.5 years, I was making in the 70s, um, my annual salary, and I had started a photography business that had earned me $10,000 the first year, and then $30,000 the second year, and then I made even more, and then I paid my taxes, I bought equipment, and then I would save. So I got really just focused on my savings, despite the fact that I wasn't earning six figures. I got really intentional, and it was hard because there were things that I wanted to do that I didn't, because I was really focused on my goal. But I was also motivated because when I saved my first 10,000, when I saved my first 15, 20,000, I was like, wait a minute, wow, I'm actually able to do this. I can actually see the results. Wow, I can keep doing this. And so that was really my focus when
Hmm.
it came to saving that $100,000. And so I got to the $100,000 mark, and I was like, oh, wow, this is amazing. I think I had saved something like $128,000. And then I was like, okay, I'm going to buy that handbag.
Okay, now it makes sense. Well, but that is incredible. Over $100,000 saved, and I was gonna ask you what your yearly income looked like, but you said you didn't reach that 100,000 uh, a year mark, which is a lot of is what I hear a lot of is it's easy to say to save X amount of dollars, but when you're making 100,000 plus, and I get that, but you did that with less, living in an expensive city like New York City, for example.
Yeah, so I was making $54,000 before taxes, and a lot of people are like, well, you're making it easy to say maybe you lived with your parents. I didn't live at home. I lived at home the first 6 months, and I saved that first 6 months $10,000 to put as a down payment on a condo in New Jersey. So I was commuting into the city, it was much cheaper. So I had a small mortgage for a tiny condo. Back then, my
Mhm.
mortgage was about $900, not including my association fee, which was like maybe 150. And then I also did have a car note for like $150 or $200, which I
Mhm.
eventually paid off. But that's what I was working with. So it was the I guess the advantage I had was that I was single. I wasn't living in New York City. I was commuting into the city, but I was
Mhm.
also very intentional. I had friends who my base salary was a blip. Like I had friends who were working on Wall Street making 150, and their
Yeah,
bonus for the year would be 150, right? And
I've heard some similar
they would
stories. Yep.
they would have 30,000 or $40,000 in student loans, and they did not pay off any of their student loans. They did not save any money, but they lived in the nicest apartments in the city. They carried the nicest handbags. They never took the subway. They were always in the taxi. So for me, it was just really what was my intention, what was my goal, and I took advantage of the fact that it's just me. My mom
Hmm.
would tell me, listen, you're making money, you should be saving your money, you should be saving your money. And so that's what I did. So everybody has a different way of viewing these saving success stories or these big debt payoff success stories, but I think it just really boils down to how bad do you want it. How bad do you want to accomplish it? And I remember times where I would say, this is so stupid, this makes no sense. Like, why am I even trying to save when I only have 1,500 in the bank and it's going to take me this long? Like, but I just kept at it and I figured out how to make it work. That side hustle meant that I was waking up early in the morning to edit photos. As soon as I got home from work, I was editing photos. Friday night, Saturday, and Sunday, I was out of my house photographing weddings, photographing baby sessions, maternity sessions, engagement sessions. I was hardly home and I was exhausted. That $100,000 was a hustle.
Yes.
It was a hustle and it hurt. Standing on my feet for 8 to 10 hours at a wedding taking pictures, that was not glamorous. So it sounds cool. Wow, she saved 100 grand, but listen, it was like blood and sweat and tears.
And I'm so happy that you're bringing that up because it's true. I mean, right now we're talking about where you're at and the end result, but it's a lot of the hard work and hustle, as you're mentioning, sometimes gets just overlooked. And I'm not about telling people to just work hard and hustle and you'll make it. But I think, like you mentioned, you did it intentionally and you had a plan. And you also fought feelings of deprivation, I'm sure, like you suggested, but you had those milestones, like you said, 10,000, 15,000, that said, I'm on the right track. This is progress. Is that what kind of helped you continue? Because I've heard that the first 10,000 are the hardest. And then after that, it just gets easier and easier.
Yeah, definitely. And it got to a point where I just wouldn't even check my account. I would automate. Obviously your 401k is automated, but my cash savings to my savings account, I would just set it up in payroll and I would just, like not even check it and just stay busy with my work and with my business. And there were times where I just was so just out of it. I would go and buy things. I would go on a shopping spree and I'll go home and be like, okay, really, Bola, and then I'll go and return all the things that I bought.
At least you
So
got to try them on.
right, exactly. So it's just, I think anybody can do anything for a short period of time. 3 years is not a long time. It may seem like it, but it goes by really quickly. And for
Mhm.
me, and so once I got past that, I kind of eased up a little bit because I was like, okay, I'm saving all this money. I'm continuing to save. Yes, I'm buying handbags. I got over that habit, but I still want to enjoy my life a bit. I still want to breathe. And I don't have that financial worry in the back of my head of, oh my God, what if I lose my job? Oh my God, what if this happens? Because I have money in the bank. So for me, those 3.5 years was completely worth it. I don't care what anybody says, whether you agree, you don't agree, you like how I did it, you don't like how I did it. For me personally, um, that was a huge foundational piece of my personal finances and even me being able to run a business full time today all goes back to that experience from when I first came out of college in my 20s.
Talk to me a little bit about what you want people to learn in these books, or your mission with them. Completely agree with you, and I think it gave you, like you said, a solid foundation to build upon, and you were in a position of financial power at that point. So yeah, you bought some designer handbags, but so that was your choice. I think there's also that we should be careful with kind of having this stigma as well. If somebody, like, that was my story for a while as well, is I would not let myself down if I made a purchase that I knew wasn't ideal, wasn't an investment, until I realized what is you, there's a sense that you have to live a little as well, so you have to find that balance. And
Yes,
if that's what you enjoy, you've saved over $100,000, then there is that budget or line item in the budget to say, hey, I've set aside this amount. I could go ahead and spend it guilt free.
exactly. I wanna, you know, go on the nice trips. I don't want to backpack. I want to stay in a nice hotel. Personally, I, I want to go to the nice dinner.
Yeah.
I want to ride in the Uber X. Okay,
Exactly.
so
Exactly. And you know what? If riding in the subway for a few years and then riding on that Uber XL or whatever it is, it makes it feel that much better, doesn't it?
exactly.
Well, thank you so much for sharing that, Bola. And now I do want to get into, after that, your story, your money mistakes, and everything that you've learned. It seems like you've written a few books, right? I think it's two books and actually one coming out in October.
Yeah, so I have written one book that came out last summer called Clever Girl Finance: Ditch Debt, Save Money, Build Real Wealth. And I have my second book coming out in October, and it's called Learn How Investing Works, Grow Your Money. And
Mm-hmm.
then my third book comes out next summer, and that's on side
Nice.
hustles.
Nice. I can't wait for that one too.
Yeah,
Um,
so the my first book, Clever Girl Finance, is just really the book I wish that I had found in the bookstore when I was at the beginning stages of just like laying out my financial plan. When I was saying, wait a minute, why aren't there any books by women, right? Or why aren't there any books by women who look like me? So this is really me sharing my story, talking about everything you need to do to create a financial plan for yourself, and not just with your finances, but with your career and in your relationships as well. And I don't just talk about my story, because my story, as amazing as it sounds, save $100,000 right out of college, there are other incredible stories out there of people who are doing incredible things. And I think there's value in showcasing a variety of different stories, because they motivate and empower people, and they make them realize that I can do this too. So the book also showcases stories from women who had strides with their finances, whether it was saving or paying off debt or investing or whatever it might be. A ton of stories are in that book. And then the second book, Learn How Investing Works, Grow Your Money, is really focused on why it's important for us to invest, and also just helping to break down the complexities, the so-called complexities around investing, right? A lot of people don't invest because they don't understand how it works. It's overwhelming. You turn on the news and you see Jim Cramer yelling at you.
yes.
So this is really, how does investing work? It specifically for the US and Canada. How does it work? What does it mean to me? Why should I invest? How do I get started investing? Where can I invest? It breaks down all of that. How do I set objectives? How do I determine my risk tolerance? How do I find a financial planner if I need one? How do I invest on my own? And that's what that book talks about. So that comes out in October.
Awesome. I'm excited for it, and I'll put a show note link to your site as well as your podcast and these books, and your social media as well. Where do you recommend people start? Do you recommend them going to the site, your website first, or what do you think that they should do? Anyone who's just being introduced to Clever Girl Finance?
Yeah, stop by clevergirlfinance.com. That's our home base. We have tons of articles on the site, new articles every single month. We have our free courses that are completely free on a variety of money topics. You can see our podcast there. You can follow us on Instagram from there. You can check out links to the books from there, wherever you purchase your book. So clevergirlfinance.com is a great place to start to get to know us and to join our community.
All right, Bola. Well, thank you so much for joining the show. It was a lot of fun talking about your story and everything that you've accomplished. I really do think you've got such a great mission with Clever Girl Finance, and I hope that you can bring this financial literacy and to the forefront and help as many people as possible. So continue from my end as well as your end. I hope this all goes to helping people, regardless of their background.
Thank you so much, and thank you for the opportunity to be here.
So I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. If you can, take a minute and subscribe and leave a review. That really helps me get seen and have this show grow. I really want the show to become a force in the personal finance community, and really hope to help as many people as I can. So if by you guys subscribing and leaving a review and also sharing it with your friends or family members who might benefit from this content, would really, really help me out as well. So thank you guys for listening, and until next time, take care.